2012 was a year of big change. Washington voters made our state among the first to legalize same-sex marriage. They voted in favor of legalizing marijuana, and they decided to give charter schools a try. The era of state-run liquor stores ended. Amazon started moving into Seattle's South Lake Union, while Boeing started rolling out 787 Dreamliners in Everett. Washington's population was hovering just under 7 million people, and the average price of a home in King County was about $400,000. Nationally, the nation grieved a series of mass shootings, including one that violently ended 28 young lives at Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown, Connecticut. Barack Obama handedly won re-election as our nation's 44th president. The fight to protect Obamacare went all the way to the Supreme Court and won. And Jay Inslee, a former congressman who first served in the Yakima Valley and then in Kitsap County, was elected Washington State's 23rd governor.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege and honor for me to be able to present to you the 23rd governor of the great state of Washington, His Excellency, Governor Jay Inslee.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Is it going to be like when Jay repeats the same story 16 times, and I've heard it so many times, and I go, no, tell that story, but people say, oh, we want to hear it. Yeah. Hi, I'm Trudy Inslee, also known as B to our grandchildren. Jay and I met in high school in our sophomore Spanish class. And I remember him walking into class because he was late in a portable, and he had a green and white surfer shirt on and very short hair. And people said, oh, that's the guy that's going to turn out for quarterback. And that's when I first met him. And he sat behind me in Spanish class. But Jay and his family exposed me to the first time I ever went for a hike. I grew up literally on a public golf course because my dad was a public golf pro. So I was outside a lot, and I liked being outside, but I'd never put anything on my back other than a set of golf clubs. And they took us, I went for a hike with his family to Lake Mowich, I think. And they put a pack on and said, we're going uphill. And I was like, well, why? What are we doing going uphill with a weighted thing on our back? And I wanted to stop about every 5 minutes. I think he just had a good work ethic because they made him work. He helped them build the house that they lived in when he was a teenager. And he learned how to do stuff and not complain. And he didn't have a lot of luxuries, and he didn't expect them or miss them. I think they were pretty much an average working family. So we went to law school, and then we moved to Eastern Washington. Jay was looking for a job. He said he went down to the bulletin board at Willamette Law School looking for job opportunities when he was about to graduate. There was one from Selah, Washington, and he applied. And we drove to Selah, Washington for an interview and met the people, and they were just wonderful, wonderful people. And so Jay decided to take the job offer. We moved out to a 4-acre old farmhouse and raised hay and eventually 3 boys, and did a lot of local work in the community. And our children were in Selah Public Schools, always were just fine there. And then they had failed a bond 6 or 7 times, depending on who you talk to. And they needed to build a new high school. So Jay and I and a couple other couples spearheaded this fundraising drive and told the people they were going to have to be doing double shifting of students, which means it's really inconvenient for the parents. And we passed the school bond, and that led to him interacting with the legislature, which wanted to take away some of the funding, and he was eventually asked to consider running for the state legislature.
Well, so we've got, these are the green peppers, and we've got some red that are just now coming in, and some yellow, and I've got my cilantro and my parsley, and lots of basil, because we use a lot of basil. So my name is Lisa Vanderloot. I started off with the governor a bazillion years ago as his legislative assistant. I went to work for him. He was a brand new state legislator from Yakima, the first one in decades, and worked with him for 2 years as his ledge assistant, and then ran his congressional campaign in the 4th Congressional District in Yakima. And when he won, I went to Washington, D.C., was his chief of staff. And then the following, I worked on and off kind of in a volunteer basis, but then came back to work for him when he was elected governor, and was a special assistant to him. And then also went over to Results Washington, and then subsequently he appointed me as director of the Commission on Hispanic Affairs, then the director of the Office of Minority and Women's Business Enterprises, and I'm now back at Results Washington as an executive advisor, which is wonderful.
I first met Governor Inslee in 2012 when I went to work for him on his campaign for governor. My name is Kelly Wicker, and I have been the governor's deputy chief of staff for 12 years. So I have found the governor to be a very inspiring leader. He is a person who instills teamwork, collaboration. He likes to hear different viewpoints. He likes to hear different perspectives.
He always wants everybody's opinion, whether they want to give it or not. He always asks, and I always interrupt and say, you don't have to answer that. You don't have to answer that. But he does really want to know. It doesn't matter what your position is, if you work for the state or if you're a person at the grocery store or whatever. He likes to know what people think about things. And then he listens and keeps asking more questions. And sometimes if people don't agree with him, he keeps asking them over and over again. And he finally will make his decision.
When I first met Jay Inslee, we had a fundraiser in Yakima, and I think there were like 10 people who showed up, Democrats. and Jay was one of them, and he was running for office. And I met him that night at that fundraiser. And I tell this story, and he's heard this, and I have to revise that because I used to tell people he was so green, he was like that grass over there. But I don't think he was green, he was a different kind of candidate. And we just hadn't seen that before. I was not sure how he would win that district because he was running against a very popular person, too, well-established, very well-liked, and this was his first race. So, and everything was new to him. But I think, putting himself out there as he always does when no one else will, getting out on that corner, put with a sign when nobody else would, kind of doing those things where people go, you shouldn't do that. And he does it. What we can't see, he can. And sometimes, at least for me anyway, the whole time there, as you know, it's like, why are you doing this? This isn't going to work. But it isn't, he's not short-term vision. We will know decades from now. Our children will know what he's done now. And so that's where he is. And many of us, including myself, are kind of stuck here, like in the immediate. And he is comfortable with decisions because he's thinking of his grandchildren's grandchildren.
Now, there's no greater challenge for Washington with more opportunity for job growth in Washington and more suited to our particular brand of genius and ingenuity than leading the world's clean energy economy. It is clear to me that we are the right state at the right time with the right people. And it's also clear to me that we face grave and immediate danger if we fail to act.
The physics of climate change are going faster than we are. And we're already starting to see a lot of very expensive and damaging and catastrophic and sad impacts. What should keep us going in the face of all that is there's so much more that we can prevent, and we can do so much to improve our own economic and health outcomes by being the agents of that change. And I think a whole lot of folks are exposed to that idea and have reasons to believe it because Jay Inslee was so successful in planting the seeds. I'm Casey Golden. I have been a clean energy and climate advocate in a variety of roles for the better part of my adult life.
I remember the first meeting with Jay quite clearly, in part because he was a congressman from Central Washington, and he came to my office in Seattle, and I'd never had a congressman from Central Washington come to talk to an environmentalist before. I'm Dennis Hayes. I'm the president of the Bullitt Foundation, a Seattle-based environmental philanthropy, and I've spent the last 60 years of my life working on environmental issues. When I got into this in 1970, there was no politician in the world who was principally known as an environmentalist, and that's now become possible.
You want to sit with me? This is a whole thing we're doing for the governor, okay?
Yeah, he's gonna see me on camera.
Yes, he would see you on camera. My name is Sam Ricketts. I first started working for Congressman Jay Inslee as a campaign coordinator for a congressional re-election campaign in the 1st District in 2008. He was already a leading national figure on the subject of climate change. He'd written a book in 2007, so he'd been working on it for a long time. But the nation hadn't been working on it for a long time. By the time I started working with him, we were just embarking on what was ultimately the first unsuccessful run at national climate legislation. But you can tell that he's deeply committed to acting on the greatest challenge of our time because of how dramatically it could impair the lives of his grandchildren and all Washington's children.
I think one of the things people forget is that when the governor came into office, it was still a split legislature. And so we had Republicans in charge of the Senate, Democrats in charge of the House. And for those first couple of years, Senate Republicans fought against even including the phrase climate change in legislation. So that was his starting point when he came into office. Hi, I'm Jamie Smith. I first started working for the governor in 2011. I was the press secretary on his first gubernatorial campaign. And then I served for all but about 2 years in the governor's office, helping lead communications for him.
Washington is now the national leader on climate issues. Everybody talks about the Cap and Invest program, and that's very important, but it fell on the heels of a half a dozen other pieces of sectoral legislation that deal with the utilities, deal with buildings, deal with transportation.
In 2019, we had a bill signing. Hundreds of people showed up. We had our legislative champions, we had all of our policy folks, so many different stakeholders and advocates, young people. You really got to see just how many folks were invested in this work, and the governor is really good about giving credit to other people. When we go to these international climate conferences or conferences in other places, he's quick to make sure he mentions Reed or Anna or Becky or Chris or Warren, you know, the folks who were right behind him doing the day-to-day work to make these bills possible. And to see that many people coming together to celebrate those big wins was absolutely one of the best days of our time in the governor's office.
Then the country rightfully looks to the masterclass that Governor Inslee has put on here in Washington State in terms of accomplishing climate breakthroughs and moving the clean energy bill forward. It's really remarkable.
I've had a front row seat to sort of see his passion and his incredible commitment around the economic prosperity and growth of the state. And much of that is driven in his vision for a green economic transformation. Mike Fong, Director, Washington State Department of Commerce. His leadership has laid an incredible foundation for the state to not just be a national leader, but a global leader, meeting with businesses, meeting with community, driving innovation, investing in new companies, encouraging and recruiting industry here in clean tech, green economic operations, and really the chief spokesperson for the value and assets of Washington State, for companies to relocate here, companies to grow here, in part because of his commitment to the fact that we can both have an environmentally friendly, responsible state, and at the same time create job growth and shared prosperity for everybody. And we're seeing it happening, and whether that be in Moses Lake, to Everett, to Vancouver, or Spokane, Tri-Cities, the incredible amount of innovation happening in the clean tech, green technology space, we should be very, very proud of, and it is going to be what will lead and enable Washingtonians to be prosperous into the future. And you can tell that when he speaks about his belief in the importance and urgency around this work, and his belief in that we will be better off, generations better off, not just because of our environment and our climate, but that it really is an engine for economic growth and innovation.
When the governor ran for president, he focused his campaign on climate. I can tell you that no political consultant said, here's how you're going to be president, distinguish yourself as the climate campaign. He ran for climate on a climate platform in order to elevate that issue and that conversation into the national dialogue in such a way that whoever won the nomination and whoever won the presidency, they were going to have to deal with it. And in that sense, he was extraordinarily successful.
I have known him for decades, way longer than I ever would want to admit. And he actually turned Washington State into a model of how you begin to address climate, how you pull community groups together, how you get them not just to understand the threat, but to do everything possible to make sure that they acted in good faith to protect their communities and to protect their families and to grow a healthier and more vibrant economy.
Some of the work that he's done on climate change has been obviously national in scope and groundbreaking and important in his efforts to protect our natural resources, because as tribes we really don't see a whole lot of difference between environmental protection, salmon recovery, climate change. It's all in one particular effort, is that to try to help us sustain our resources and the ecosystems that support them. Hello, I'm Leonard Forsman, Chairman of the Suquamish Tribe and also President of the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians.
My name is Ron Allen. I am the Chairman and CEO for the Jamestown S'Klallam Tribe, located on the Olympic Peninsula, west of Seattle. That was an issue that was always very important to Jay. When he became more and more educated about the challenges of climate change, the acidification and the ocean, those kinds of matters, that some troubling challenges that we have because of growth and development, Jay knew that we had to find balance. And he knew that because of the cultural values of the tribes as good stewards, that he knew that we could be co-stewards, co-managers together, that was going to be a win-win proposition.
Yeah, we've had some big events. The collapse of the bridge on I-5, terrible fatal landslide up at the little town of Oso. Fire seasons, worst in state history, back to back to back, and just kind of ever increasing in intensity due to our climate change that we have going on. And then of course the COVID pandemic, which really rocked us for a couple of years. So I'm Brett Doherty, Major General U.S. Army, recently retired, and I was the Adjutant General from 2012 through 2024.
The Riverside Bridge over I-5 just collapsed. We have vehicles in the water.
So let's go back to the Skagit River Bridge. That was my first real interaction with the governor at an emergency. My name is John Richard Batiste, and I'm the Chief of the Washington State Patrol.
70,000 people a day use the bridge over the Skagit. It is a major connector between Seattle and Canada.
A big deal. I mean, you're talking about Interstate 5, all the way from Canada to Arizona. And so huge interruption to transit and also commerce. big deal to that community to give some immediate reassurance that this shall be taken care of as fast as possible, and the Gov was fantastic at that.
My phone started going off, and it was Governor Inslee, and he was fairly new in office at that time, and he told me that, you know, hey, this bridge has collapsed on I-5, but he didn't stop there. He said, I need you to find me a Bailey Bridge, General. So I started digging hard to go find a Bailey Bridge. I got EMD all generated up, and National Guard and Army Reserve and Fort Lewis, everybody, because a Bailey Bridge is typically a military type of bridge. But that's the first time I really encountered the governor's personal desire to come up with the solution to a problem.
When people are faced with a catastrophe that's going to impact them personally and professionally, they want some assurance, and the governor was able to give that to them. It was great to witness.
911, what is your emergency?
There is a house on 530 and a big slide, and it is covering the road at the bottom of Scaglin Hill.
I first got a call in the morning of March 22nd saying that there had been a slide. My name's Lacey Harper. I was part of the governor's administration in 2013. So nobody knew the impact, the size or the scope. And it was a bright sunny day, so it was kind of surprising. It had been raining earlier.
You know, our situational awareness of how bad that landslide was really a challenge for us.
Initially, we didn't know the scale of the situation until we really got more into it with getting information from the locals about what has transpired and what is it that we have to recover from.
You started hearing the tales of it was something much worse. But I don't know that the governor or I really understood what we were up against until we flew up there, just within a day. And I'll never forget turning the corner there as his C-12 came around and just seeing that entire mountainside down. And I looked at the governor, and he had the same expression on his face that I know that I had on mine. We knew we had a huge, huge problem to deal with up there.
I think we're looking at a catastrophic event here. We've got Whitman Road that has been taken out by a slide. The river is backing up, and 530 has been completely blocked out. We got houses with a critical patient, 2 others that we know of.
My name's Dan Rankin. I was mayor during the 2014 SR 530 Oso landslide. No, I remember getting a call early. At that time, it was pretty much chaos. We were retreating by order from a rising river or flood.
It was heartbreaking. Everything was gone. Still, there was, it was unclear of what had happened. One of the things that I've really taken away from this was the people and, the amount of love and dedication this community has for one another and really to support each other through this tragic event. So that's the thing that really sticks with me.
So it was really heartening to see the whole state come together, really, to get behind that little town.
What made the SR 530 landslide recovery so successful in so many different ways and so many facets, there was immediate camaraderie and friendship built. There was a lot of trust put in to all of us. My community had to put trust into me to tell the truth and do the work that I had to do. There was trust built from the people that volunteered originally but stayed through the whole operation. To the people working, generating trajectory and mud flows and different things so that we knew the areas that we needed to work in. To Governor Inslee's recognition that where he needed to be working was in Olympia. Masterminding a direction for recovery.
I'm Charles Knudsen, and I was a senior policy advisor to the governor for his first 2 terms. The incident, to me, was the performance of some of the state agencies that were involved in this, Washington State Patrol, the National Guard, of course, but particularly WSDOT. They were able to quickly and tastefully, respectfully remove 90,000 cubic yards of debris in just 20 days. And they were able to clear that road. They were able to get the road back in a functional state in just 109 days. So just incredible work, and they're a high pressure situation.
Don't wait till this particular road's done to get up to Darrington. There's at least 2 good roads and 2.5 roads to get here. Darrington Days is May 31st. The Blues Festival is coming up. Restaurants are open. This is a place to bring your family and recreate for the next couple of months to help these communities and these small businesses. I attend to the Darrington Days, and I hope others are as well. These roads are open. They all lead to Darrington this year.
In the early days, we were really paying attention to what was happening in China. And a lot of us around the state and public health were getting this sense in our gut, like this is big, and we really need to prepare for that. John Weisman worked as the Washington State Secretary of Health in the first 2 terms of the governor.
COVID was probably the most challenging professional endeavor of my career, completely unprecedented, and there was no playbook. Hi, Catherine Leathers, Governor's General Counsel.
When the COVID-19 pandemic started to impact us, the tribes, of course, have a long history with pandemics and have suffered from the effects of pandemics through our history.
This governor was a North Star for all of us.
So he was incredibly engaged from the very beginning and throughout the entire time, and wanting to make sure he did right by the people of Washington State. That was always his driving force and what he instilled upon all of us.
When the governor came out very strongly about us taking action to minimize the spread of the virus, we were really impressed by his aggressive and sometimes difficult stances that he took to keep us all safe.
He was determined to take a science-based approach to this horrific situation that we were all in.
We were very dependent upon the state for information, for testing equipment and testing kits, and also on vaccine distribution.
There was a hugely emotional side of the governor about this, and about not wanting to lose people, not wanting to lose businesses, and wanting to make the best decisions, and knowing that he had to make decisions where the data wasn't absolutely clear what you should do in this situation. It was uncharted territory. My name's Lori Jenkins. I represent the 27th Legislative District and have since was elected in 2010, started in 2011, and then for the last 5 years have been Speaker of the House.
We don't know why this patient was loaded into an ambulance outside Life Care Center in Kirkland Saturday morning. We do know that the patients and the medical staff are at the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak in the U.S.
We as a state had the first case in the U.S., and what happened across the country, a lot of people were watching what the state of Washington was doing, how we were leading, how the governor was leading, how his team was leading, and how all the partners, not just at the state, but throughout communities, were coming together. So my name is Dr. Umair Shah, and I'm Secretary of Health for the great state of Washington.
I'll never forget that day in January 2020 when David Postman, our Chief of Staff, and myself told the governor about the first case. And everything changed in that moment. It was an all-hands-on-deck approach, and every agency stepped up. The response was full of collaboration and teamwork, ranging from our Department of Health to our military department, the Department of Social and Health Services, the work we had to do at our 24/7s. Like, there was a lot of teamwork, and I'm really proud of the response that Washington led.
When I reflect about how we were able to successfully navigate, it really was about partnerships. Jamila Thomas, I was the governor's chief of staff from November of 2020 until February of 2020. Oh my gosh, I should know this. 2024. Given all the skepticism out there, we needed to have trusted partners in community, whether it was working with our tribal partners or with a community church or a community organization somewhere to help get the word out about vaccines and the safety of the vaccines and all of that. That was the key. And it was amazing to me how we partnered with business to, for example, get the test kits out, COVID test kits out to people in a day or two. I thought that was amazing. And I love seeing that because it really does show the spirit of who we are and what our values are in times of crisis and uncertainty. To see those partnerships just come together to benefit folks who live here, it was amazing, very heartening.
Even though we had that first case in the continental United States, we then had the lowest death rate, the top 5 states across the country, which really just shows how much that partnership and that collegiality and everybody working together really brought us home to protect Washingtonians.
Washington State is recognized as one of those who really addressed the pandemic really well. And they want to know sort of how we did that. And again, I think I come back to the team. We had the right people in place who were looking at this not just from the science, but the human aspect as well. What impact was this having on people's lives? And what did that mean in terms of policy? What things did we have to put in place to mitigate essentially the harms of public health protection measures, whether those were things around housing and making sure people weren't evicted, what it meant for unemployment, et cetera.
His leadership through the pandemic, the number of Washingtonians' lives who were saved by the really tough decisions that he made and that sometimes we made together, that's irreplaceable. You can't replace a single one of those lives that were lost. And when we know that we have 25,000 people likely in Washington that are alive today because of some of these difficult decisions that he made, I think that's something that he and we as a state should be proud of forever.
We're very fortunate here in Washington State. We've added 100,000 new businesses since the pandemic. We have global reach, globally recognized brands. You all know what those are. But while we have a global reach, the name of the game is still local. It's about small businesses. It's about building out a small business resiliency network, local grants, working capital. And that's really where we see our interventions and strategies that take advantage of the full continuum and deployment of resources that we have in commerce is what builds such a strong environment, I think, for economic growth.
There are so many things that as we reflect back on the last 12 years of Governor Inslee's administration, we can be incredibly proud of. I think about labor standards. We are now in a place where Washington State has the highest statewide minimum wage. We are in a place where Washington State has the greatest protections for folks who are working overtime anywhere in the country. We also have paid sick leave. And that's the kind of thing that we did not have at the beginning of this administration, and boy, was it important when you think about what happened in the pandemic. Hi, I'm Joel Sachs, and I'm the director of the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries.
Paid family medical leave is a program. Washington State was the 5th state in the nation to stand this up and the first to do it from the ground up. It helps people do what they need to do for their family and keep their jobs. And so people stay attached to the workforce. At times in history, they would have quit their jobs to go take care of a family member or because they had a serious health condition. I love what it does for employers because it really levels the playing field, and those small employers can offer the same benefits that large employers know are so important to the health and well-being of employees. I'm Cami Fee, Commissioner at Employment Security Department.
Also, from a workplace safety perspective, Washington State has always been a leader, and I believe we are a safer place to work today than we were at the beginning of Governor Inslee's term. We are also one of the few states in the country that have stood up incredibly new and important protections for workers, whether it's protection for folks working outside in high heat, folks working and exposed to wildfire, folks working in incredibly dangerous industries exposed to dangerous chemicals.
I think the governor has recognized that that full ecosystem and the way our Commerce Department is shaped is that we are not just focused on business development. The increasing context for economic health and prosperity is that community well-being and the health of the community at large is critically important to creating an environment that fosters business growth, insisting that we center equity in the work that we're doing. And we have not lost sight of that. That has been an anchor policy for us, and we have built our portfolio around equitable outcomes in every aspect of our work.
I'm really proud of the governor's leadership when it comes to diversity and belonging. And one place that shows is in our appointments. I am so proud of the over 6,000 people that we appointed in the last 12 years to not only our staff and our cabinet, but to over 300 boards and commissions, and of course to the judiciary, where we made many firsts. And if you look at the appointments that we made, you will see the difference and the impact that we're making on the communities that we serve.
The role that judges play in society is pretty interesting in so many ways. When you think about the thousands and thousands of cases that are decided around the state, nobody stops to think for a moment, how do people experience that judge on the bench? Whether it's to adjudicate a simple ticket or it's to sentence someone for the rest of their life to prison. I'm Mary Yu, and I'm the first API to sit in the Washington State Supreme Court. But what a privilege, right, to actually interpret the rule of law for all Washingtonians. And then to later be joined by two other appointments by the governor, right? The first Native American woman to sit on a state Supreme Court is Justice Montoya Lewis. And then subsequently another position opens, and to be joined by the first Black woman to sit on our state Supreme Court, Justice Helen Whitener. The more diversity we bring to the judicial branch, the more we reflect our community. The more we reflect our community, I think, at the end of the day, the better the judgment.
My first day in the job, I had a binder, a 3-ring binder, that my predecessor, Governor Gregoire's general counsel, had left for me, and it was a list of all the issues that she thought were going to come up in the first year or so. There was a description of a case that she anticipated would be nearing the end of its appeals and was due to be executed. So we were thinking within the first year or early on, and it was just really like, holy crap moment of, I'm going to have to talk to my team about whether we're going to oversee an execution. My name is Nick Brown. I was general counsel for Governor Inslee during his first term. 3rd or 4th month in the job, I was visiting death row in the intensive management unit, and it was surreal for me because the case that I had read about that first day in the job, when I went to visit, he was there. Like, he was just right in the open room. It was really odd for me to read about the case and understand it intellectually. And then you're just quickly reminded of the people on both sides that are behind it. You know, the governor could have been very safe around the death penalty, or status quo at least. And the fact that he ultimately put a moratorium on it really just was courageous, which I'm forever proud of as something that changed the arc of justice.
When the ultimate decision is death, there is too much at stake to accept an imperfect system.
When Governor Inslee took office 12 years ago, we were 48th in the nation for psychiatric services per capita, meaning there were only 2 states, a little worse than us. I'm Cheryl Strange, and I serve as Governor Inslee's secretary for the Department of Corrections here.
In 2014, the state of Washington, DSHS, was sued because we were not providing competency restoration services for people waiting in jail. And that lawsuit is called Trueblood versus DSHS. Hello, my name is Hilma Meneses, and I am the Secretary of the Department of Social and Health Services. The allegation was that we were violating people's constitutional rights because we were not providing those services timely. And in many cases, some people were waiting months and months and months for those services. And the reason they were waiting is because we didn't have enough beds in our facilities. Those beds had been cut many, many years prior, and we never kept up with the demand. Fast forward, in the next several years, the state of Washington under Governor Inslee has invested close to $2 billion in this matter.
In 12 short years, Governor Inslee, his investments, we are now 33rd. That is humongous.
We have been able to turn that dilemma around. In the last 2 years, we were able to open several facilities, including Olympic Heritage. We identified that property in August of 2023. We purchased it, we renovated it, and we opened it in October, 2 months later. So now, today, we have 0 people waiting over 7 days as a result of our investments and as a result of the commitment that was made by the governor and the legislature and our staff.
I'm Sue Birch. I'm the director of the Washington State Healthcare Authority. We really have moved Washington in a tremendous community-based direction. We're no longer pushing people towards institutional care. We're helping people get stabilized, and we're getting them back to their communities and back into supportive employment and supportive housing. And that's helping people come out of prisons. That's helping people transition from their hospital, Western State hospital settings to other community settings. It's helping people in their supportive employment. All of these investments in workforce have been really key because the need was so great.
Washington State has steadily, over the last 11 years, reduced recidivism, meaning returning to prison, by 1/3.
There's hardly a more successful anti-crime effort than this one right here on this graph. And we ought to be proud of it in the state of Washington.
But Governor Jay Inslee says there's more work to be done and convened a panel of state employees to come up with suggestions.
Governor Inslee's support and advocacy to really hone in and laser focus on the science of reducing recidivism. And we know what that is. That's a livable wage job. That's access to health care and behavioral health, substance use, mental health. It's access to stable housing. All that comes together to make a better neighbor.
I loved Washington when I started this job, but I love her a lot more now, just having seen what we've been able to do as a community for the last 12 years. So when I see the mountains, I just think Washington, and it really reminds me of the value system that we have here, caring for our environment, caring for our people, no matter who you are, and always making progress, and always embracing innovation. And those are things that I knew a bit going in, but now I understand the depth of the genius of this state, and it really is a place of great genius. Not just technologically, but from a genius in the standpoint of how we take care of each other in our communities. Trudy and I spent 20 years in the Yakima Valley. We saw some of the hardest working people you will ever see out there picking apples and asparagus, and I'm really glad that we're protecting these really hard-working people by having really the first best protection against heat injuries when you're working in the agricultural industry. This is important to me because I know how hard these folks work, and it's something I've worked on since I first got elected. When I got elected in 1989, one of my very first votes was getting unemployment compensation for farm workers. And I remember I walked out in the chamber and people said, well, you can't do that from Yakima. And I said, the hell I can't. I've seen how hard these people are working. They need to be protected. I think in my mind, it's an outgrowth a little bit of associated with my competitive spirit, that I like to win and I like to work with teams. So inspiring my teams is something that I kind of think I've done from a kind of early age. And why that is, I don't know. Funny story, I don't know if I ever told you this story, but so I played football in 9th grade at Cascade Junior High School. And my coach, Mr. Dawes, who was just a great guy, he was a fun guy, science teacher, and he would have us run the hill. So there was a hill behind Cascade Junior High School. So he'd have us run the hill. And I remember one time he said, you know, I like it. You're always first up that hill. And I remember that and I go, maybe he imprinted that. Maybe it comes from Coach Dawes. Maybe when he said that, I said, well, okay, that's my role. So maybe he had an impact. Who knows? Who knows? You know, you want to be first up the hill and lead the charge. So the other thing is it comes from confidence and in the ability to stretch and a willingness also to accept defeat and temporary setbacks. I think it comes from that as well. I've always encouraged our state employees to take risks, to try new approaches and not be afraid of failure. And I think that has been an important part. I got thrown out of Congress in 1994. I lost the governor's race in 1996, but I never felt daunted by those things. And so you put those three things in your soup and maybe you get a decent governor. So look at, this isn't, you know, governors usually crow about their states, but it's not just us. It's the objective people who've looked at our state. They have said we're the best place to work, we're the best place to run a business. We've been just recently ranked the #1 place for bicycle usage in communities in the state. We have clearly have the best financial aid package for our students who want to go to college. And what I'm proud of is that I always ask the state to dream bigger, bolder, faster than they might have otherwise. So I viewed my role as, because I have so much confidence in our state, I was always asking our state to stretch, to be more ambitious, to think bigger, think bolder, lead the state faster, lead the nation faster than we normally would. And the state responded in all these firsts in climate action, long-term care, capital gains, ending the death penalty, gun safety. The state always responded to that call. I think if you look back at this period of Washington history, the fact that we fought climate change will be seen as the most important thing over time. Then you go to the smaller things that I'm happiest about, which is a little tiny innovation that I came up with one day early, and I met somebody who's very inspirational, and I wanted to honor them. So I took off my Apple pin, and I said they were the Washingtonian of the day. They declared by executive order they were the Washingtonian of the day. And since then, I've done hundreds of people who, and they only use one a day as Washingtonian of the day. And that may be the most successful innovation as governor, because I think people appreciated it, and I appreciated it because it was a chance to connect with somebody who was inspiring to me. And I've been inspired so many different times. This is the highlight of my life, other than being a grandfather and father and husband for 52 years. This is like the pinnacle of a lifetime for me, because I've been able to connect with my community. I've got to know thousands of people. We've made meaningful progress. I mean, who gets to do that? This is something like, when I was young, I suppose I probably wanted to play, you know, for the Sonics, but I think this is better. And I know I'm a better governor than I would have been an NBA player. Well, if you look at it for the number of things we got done, it's actually pretty gratifying. because the big things that we wanted to achieve when we first went into office, we've really had tremendous success. I mean, creating a clean energy economy. We've got really the #1 clean energy economy certainly in America right now. We have got fully funding for education under McCleary, although there's more to do, of course, in that. We've had 2 huge transportation packages to move forward. We've adopted some lean management performance metrics that have helped our agencies improve their performance. We've increased early child education, which has always been important to Trudy and myself. It's what kind of got us into this line of work. We've protected a woman's right of choice and the privacy issues and extended protections of whoever you want to love in our state. So we've had some profound, really, advances in our state. You can't ignore the gun safety issues we've done that cost my seat in 1994 and then allowed us to move forward on gun safety in the state of Washington. So it's been a good 12 years. Thank you, Washington.